the video, start the show, and dive into the questions. All right, again, welcome back to Thrive and welcome back to Carson. I mean, Carson, you are a best-selling author. You are an 8 times CEO award winner. We don't even know what that means, but we are impressed by it. You've got your own podcast. You are in the Sales Hall of Fame. You work for Microsoft. But for those couple of people who are in sales or just in business today that may not know you, give us a little bit of background. I'm really interested into your journey to become all these titles and accomplishments that you are.
No, thank you so much for that, Meredith. As we were chatting, I followed you for a long time. So thank you for everything you do and contribute to the sales community. Frankly, I consider myself a lifelong student of selling. I got into sales very much by accident. Came from a small town. I have to pinch myself often. Some of the things that you rattled off, I've been very fortunate, very blessed to meet some great people and to have some phenomenal opportunities. I love selling and sales leadership. And, I wrote a book several years ago that was very serendipitous because it made my resume stand out in a time where I was facing layoff, and got my next job because of that. And thanks to some great relationships and some branding along the way, I get to lead a sales team at one of the biggest brands in the world. So I've worked at large companies, small companies. I've worked in one call close boiler room scenarios. I've worked in enterprise sales with long sales cycles. I feel like I've done a lot, and I've really been very fortunate. So CEO award, President's Club, Gold Club, Platinum Club, just kind of combining all of those. I've been very fortunate to win that at AT&T, Verizon, and also with Microsoft over the last 9 years that I've been here. So very fortunate to win those awards. And it's because of being surrounded by great people and great customers and partners.
So let me ask you this. Tell us what was the accidental way that you got into sales?
Sure. I think a lot of people, get into
Yes.
sales by accident, right? I'm an accidental podcaster. That kind of started at the beginning of the pandemic because I just was having conversations and other people called it a podcast. I didn't want to label it, but I embraced it and wound up having a lot of fun with that. And when it came to sales, I remember, my goodness, 20 plus years ago now, and I was going out for a job interview that a friend's relative got me introduced to this recruiter. And I thought I was going out for a customer service job. And no, it was one call close, pressure sales. And it was intense. But, fortunately, God gave me 2 gifts: talk fast, type fast. And I performed well. And the rest is history.
I think it's so sad that I'm the same way. I got into sales by accident, and I just, if you'd asked me when I was a kid, there was no way I was going into sales. Worst thing ever. It gets such a bad rap, and it is such an amazing profession on, so many levels. But just like you said, with all the things that have happened, to you, they never would have happened had you not come into the, into the sales arena. Where do you think that sales got off track, or why do you think it is such a challenging profession for so many people?
I love that question, Meredith. And it's, keep in mind, and I try to pride myself and I try to pride my, the people that I coach and train in sales, be a noble practitioner of selling. I think it's the poor practitioners, the ones that manipulate or, come across as that salesy. See, even the term is derogatory, right? But you know what I mean, where a customer can see and smell it from a mile away. And when you come to it from a place of selfishness, or you don't have a collaborative spirit, or you're just in it for your own result and glory, or you just sound and look like everybody else from a sending spam messages or unsolicited emails, those types of things, that anybody can do, that anybody can do easily, that show that you didn't do your research, do your homework. It's the poor practitioners that give it a bad name. There are noble knights of the sales game out there, and those are the ones that I always try to align to, that I learned so much from.
So you have worked in large corporations, you worked in small businesses. And I think that, when you talk about the fact that there are so many things that feel salesy, I know my experience, and I'd be curious if it was the same with yours. When I worked in a lot of corporations and a lot of companies, it was the very things that they were grading us on that would force some of those top performers. Like, I just decided early on that I was going to win the award at the end of the year, and I was going to get in trouble all year long for not blowing out campaigns. Um, and then, understanding really early on what my bosses cared about. And what they really cared about is, did I exceed the number that they needed me to exceed annually? That made the CFO and the CEO, happy. But I'm just curious, like, how has that been your experience? And, how did you really navigate that? Because you've not only, I mean, to say that you've been successful is a serious understatement. I mean, and I imagine working in the companies you've had to navigate some landmines and some bad sales bosses.
Wow, that's a great statement and question. And it's look, leadership sets the tone and the culture for sales and sales success or lack thereof. And when I look at commonalities, because absolutely, I've had great managers, I've had not so great managers, and then somewhere in between during my time. And I'll tell you, I mean, there's a political component, right? There's the ability to win and build consensus in your organization. You've got to work with a lot of key partners, stakeholders, colleagues. You have to approach it with their outcome and their win in mind as well. But Meredith, you alluded to something that's super important. And where I think we fail as managers sometimes, or as management, is when we have a knee-jerk reaction to spreadsheet management, or we start focusing too much on the widget itself as opposed to the people or the process that leads to the metrics. I'm a big believer in people and process. If you've got the right people and you're coaching them, giving them the resources, the training that they need, and the ongoing support consistently, and you follow the right processes, and I'm saying this with full cognizance that processes will shift and change over time, right? Your outcomes that you're trying to drive will change. The outlook will change. The whole landscape, the climate can change. Right now, we're in a very interesting economic time that doesn't mimic what we were doing 1 year, 2 years, 5 years ago. So the playing field can change, but we have to make sure that we adapt and that we calibrate and recalibrate around sales fundamentals. And I think that's where sales cultures can go awry, is when we focus too much on the widget or the knee-jerk reaction to a spreadsheet, as opposed to really investing time in people and understanding and executing process.
Yeah, so well said. I mean, the process has definitely changed. It was interesting. I had a woman call me earlier today about some succession planning stuff she wanted. And she said, I was so surprised when I dug into your website. She said that you did succession planning. I followed you for sales. And I said, it's interesting. I started out in sales, all in sales, but if you don't have good people, you can't sell anything. Like, nothing matters. So you have to marry those two pieces together. But we're in a time right now, and as I deal with so many of my clients, there's so much burnout in sales. I mean, either people struggling to make the shift to the fact that virtual is here to stay, even though that's been a 3-year shift. I guess people were hanging on, hoping it would, pop back or whatever. But what do you say to people who are struggling with burnout in sales? I had a young woman last week who wants to get out of the profession, and I'm just like, please don't do it. But why is there so much burnout right now, and what do we need to do to right that shift?
Wow, amazing question. Look, I've been there, right? And this is coming from somebody that in my 20s, 30s, I was being told by a lot of people, at your pace, at your speed, you're going to burn out. And I never did. I always sloughed that off. But, just in the last few years, we're facing this time that is unlike anything else. And I mean, a lot of us have shifted from, look, I don't know how in the world I used to go see 4, 5, 6 customers in a day in person and manage to get my job done. Now it's, I support East and West Coast. So I'm 7 o'clock to 6 o'clock, bell to bell, back to back, all day, every day. You're at your desk. People expect to IM you and they get you, right? I mean, it's constant activity. And even the best are going to feel, a lot of strain and stress, right? So I think the key element to best answer that, Meredith, is you've got to take a step back. You've got to have what I like to call, and I borrowed this from a girl that I interviewed actually recently on one of my podcasts, was ruthless discipline around your scheduling. You've got to really make sure that you are focused on the big rocks, the key areas that are going to help you be successful and that are going to deliver wins for your customers. You've got to be able to scale where able, but you've got to go down your list. Every day I've got my list of non-negotiables, and I construct those when I'm in my now home gym that I built during the pandemic. But, it used to be just going to the gym, but you've got to have that time for yourself that is separate from everything else. That's where you're digesting your podcasts and your audiobooks, and you're, doing something that kind of frees your mind so that you can wrap your head around, what does success look like today? I list 5+ non-negotiables every single day, and I have to nail them before I really get sucked into the minutia of everything else. See, where I think we get burnt out is when we keep being pulled into, I've got to put out this fire, I've got to pull out this fire. And we do that all day. And then we look at the end result. We didn't achieve anything because we didn't have those targeted, focused non-negotiables to execute upon. I got to tell you, I mean, I did my non-negotiables early on today, even though I was getting pulled in a lot of different directions, and I felt super accomplished and energized all day. I had that time in the gym this morning to collect my thoughts and carve out what success would look like. And frankly, finding ways to infuse your passions into what you do is also super important. Finding ways to be the change. Look at the problems that your leadership is talking about, or that you can even see. Like, if you see that morale is down, what can you do about it? Yeah. One person can change company culture. Start having conversations with other sellers or leaders, and build community around what you do. Those types of things can breathe new life into you. And then the last thing I would say on that topic is, going back to the scheduling piece, go to your day and ask yourself, is this mission critical to get done today? Or is it something that could move to tomorrow or next week? So I can give myself a little bit more time to focus and breathe. Go outside, take a walk. Some of your calls you can do outside, and into nature. Obviously, there's studies that will prove that that's good for the body and the soul. So burnout's real, and it is very pressing and prevalent right now. I work in the tech industry where there's a lot of layoffs going on as well, and it's stressful. And I think the most important thing is that we're attuned to what we're feeling, but that we are also available to support others that are going through the same thing. If we focus on building relationships right now, we will be successful, and we'll get through this together.
Yeah, I think that I want to come back and I want to talk about relationships, but I want to pick up on something that you said, because I love the fact that I really hope the audience heard this, is the fact that your non-negotiables, your personal life feeds into that. And I think that is so key. I read years ago this great article in the Harvard Business Review called The Corporate Athlete. And from that, I got into Tony Schwartz's Manage Your Energy, not your time. And all of my friends and my peers laugh at me because it's, you don't know if Meredith's at her desk or she's on a tennis court. You don't know if she's on a stage or she's on her mountain bike. And that's how I run my life all day long. I mean, before I left the house this morning, I was on the tennis court at 6 a.m. playing mixed doubles with, my friends. I was up at 5. I worked for an hour, ran to the tennis court. We played for an hour and a half. I came back, ran, packed my stuff, came down here to Charleston for a speaking engagement. But that, everybody's different. And you sitting at a desk all day from 8 to 5 takes the life out of me. I can't do it. But mixing my life together like that. But the biggest thing that I love what you're saying, and I want you to talk a little bit more about, is in essence, you are saying, even if you work for a big company and you work for a sales manager, you got to manage yourself.
Yeah. So one thing that I recommend to people right now is that we're all given these talents, these superpowers, these things that are game changing, where you are uniquely qualified in a certain area, or ability to deliver unique wins to customers, to colleagues, to your team. And I think right now more than ever, we've got to double down on that. And, there's a lot of talk right now of personal brand and, being in control of your career. And in sales, that's, something that is extremely top of mind when I talk to other sales leaders and sellers, is how can you transform your career by really establishing that. And I think it's important to point out, I did 9 years at AT&T, and then I did a couple of jumps, hops, and skips in between there in Microsoft at smaller organizations. And what's fascinating to me, Meredith, is my career now looks nothing like what it did back then. And I honestly thought when I got laid off twice earlier in my career that I had peaked, that I had done everything that I could do. And it's amazing to me now that by really doubling down on relationships and network, but also the resources, just being resourceful as a seller, figuring out everything that I had at my disposal and marrying the two, creating winning relationships for my customers, for my partners, based on who I know and how I can orchestrate and be a conduit or a broker to those relationships. That was the game changer for me. And, years ago, back when it was kind of an anomaly, I started using LinkedIn and other tools to just get meetings with prospects, with executives. Now I interview executives on my podcast that are customers that, they turn into very often buying relationships. You never know where these relationships beget deals, period. And through a very serendipitous course of action, a guy like me from a small town with zero tech background became known as the #1 social seller in all of Microsoft, which is insane. It's absolutely insane. And to have somebody tell me a few years ago, Carson, you're the new seller. You're the new type of seller, using all these digital tools. And it's like, I've been doing this for 23 years and I'm the new type of seller. That blows my mind. But my point is that you can at any point in time take and make that decision to really figure out, okay, what am I good at? And how can I use that to the benefit of everybody else in the room? And guess what? If everybody else is winning because of you, it's going to help you win in more ways than you can imagine.
Yeah, here's what I love so much about your story is that you're the #1 social seller in tech, and you did it by building connections and relationships.
Yeah.
Is that somehow we have decided that relationships, like as a society, relationships don't get the same investment in sales that they got when in the dark ages when I was coming up in sales. But I talk about this from the stage a lot. So I'm a big believer that if you build your network, it'll change your life. I think you're only one connection away from somebody who can solve any problem you have, open any door, and you never know. I mean, always talk to people, but invest in them first. But years ago, I was playing in a golf tournament when a young man was put on our team because we were short a golfer. He's a young kid, could hit the bejeebies out of the golf ball. I mean, we really needed him. But he was set up there to open up a territory. And I thought, this is the luckiest human being that has ever been put on the face of the earth, because between my two friends and I, there wasn't a door we couldn't open for him. I mean, just not a door. But not one time in a 4.5, 5 hour round of golf, because it was a tournament, did he ever ask us a question about any of us. And so he left there, and I wasn't going to put my network out. It wasn't him. I was frustrated that the company had not told him that his job was not to go there and play golf. They told him you have to teach people to network. And I think my parents had to teach me, but I think in today's society, that has to move into the corporate world because it isn't being taught anywhere.
It's totally true. I have a lot of conversations where I'm a mentor or I'm a sponsor, and it's all about helping others understand what they need to do, who they need to look for. What's the title? What's the, whether you're looking from a career perspective and you're looking for a potential future hiring manager or a decision maker or potential skip level so you can get on that radar and create that relationship, create synergies. And, when there is an opportunity, be the obvious choice, all the way to customer dialogue where, I've based my entire platform on going out and I can control 3 major things: the quality of my message, the quantity of outreach, and the consistency of my execution over time. And if I really double down on those things, Meredith, I can, if I reach out to 100 people and I know that I'm going to get 40 or 50 of them to accept my request, and I'm going to get 5 people to take a meeting with me, that's gold. I know what I can do with those 5 meetings, and that's the key. And believe it or not, I'm an introvert. And also, believe it or not everybody always wants to talk to a company that has a large logo on its back. Because I know there's a lot of people that say, oh, you work for a big name. That doesn't mean I am guaranteed a meeting. And I've also worked for very small names. I started social selling when I was at a small firm, small consultant firm, a decade ago when it was an anomaly. And the gentleman who owned the place said, use social media in a way to build and create and nurture relationships and stay top of mind. And I've always just used that. And I added one more layer to that, Meredith, and it was build community. Find ways to build community. I started at a gig 8 years ago or 9 years ago with Microsoft, brand new role. And out of St. Louis, we were number one in the world 8 quarters in a row, our team. And all we did differently was we would build a community around everything that we were doing. Everyone that had, been interested or came in from a marketing lead perspective, we would give value adds, newsletters, help them find ways to save money. I've introduced competition before when it was the right thing to do, and I knew that I wasn't the right solution. I had a friend at the competitor, made the relationship happen, and guess what that does? That means that I earn the right to be a trusted advisor because I'm not just out for myself, but also my friend, when there were other opportunities, they reciprocate. You never know where your investments are going to pay off, so just invest in everybody and everything you can.
So why do you think that, so if there's, someone listening to this and they're not in an environment where they're being taught to network, where they're being taught to, see, I feel like what we're talking about is a difference between getting into sales, that it can be a lifelong career, versus getting into sales where it feels pressure. And I believe, right or wrong, more often than not, unfortunately, a lot of people are in situations where the pressure they feel, if they don't understand how to manage themselves out of it, just like I told you, I just would get in trouble for campaigns. I would let low-level managers yell at me all year long, and then I would be on the stage getting the president's award.
Mhm.
And but I had to figure that out on my own. What advice do you have for people in sales who either aren't happy in the position that they're in, or need to navigate a marketplace that is uncertain, or needs to do a better job of managing themselves?
That's a super important question, Meredith. And I think I've gone through this, right, in my career and even in, relatively recent memory. And I think we're always looking for or interviewing for our next job. There's that phrase, right? But you've got to get very concrete on two things. One, what are my unique superpowers? What am I passionate about? What am I great at that I can help other people win with? And then two, what are the most important reasons that you're in sales or attracted to sales, right? I've gotten out of sales before. I came right back. It was a toxic environment years upon years ago, but it wasn't about sales. And even in recent years, when I've looked at, okay, am I happy? Am I fulfilled? Is there something else I would rather do? I've always come back to a couple of things. And one, I like to deliver wins and serve and win in prestigious sales roles. That's important to me. I love what sales has done for me personally. I mean, heck, I met my wife interviewing her for a sales role coming up on 17 years ago. And on top of that, it's been able to create a life that I've always dreamed of. But the other thing is there's always going to be pressure. There will always be pressure. And I think you have to be realistic and cognizant of the fact that the pressure is not personal to you. You work for an organization that, and what's the phrase? Pressure is a privilege.
Yes.
You work in a scenario where because there is pressure, because there is a number that's got to be delivered to Wall Street, or because there's other people that need to put food on the table, whatever it is, that pressure exists for a reason. You get paid to do a role. And, I think the key element is, even though there's so much uncertainty and ambiguity right now in this current time, if you're a great seller, you've got great life expectancy because you can go anywhere. I've been very fortunate in my career, and it's a heck of a lot easier to connect the dots backwards. It's interesting at times where I was at critical junctures or crucibles in my sales career. What they beget was beautiful. Everything, no matter what you're going through today, nothing good or bad lasts. So be crisp on two really important things. Why are you attracted to sales or not? And if it's because of your current role and maybe you can find what you love somewhere else, all the better. But be really intentional about your strengths, your superpowers, and how you can use them to serve others. That's it.
So such great advice. It's when you ask if people are attracted to sales, I really believe fundamentally if you took the word sales out of it, we're all attracted to it because I think we have an innate human desire to want to help other people. And that's really fundamentally what sales is. I love that you said you're an introvert because I am one too. People never believe that, but I definitely I definitely am, and I almost think it positions us a little bit better from a sales position. I have not scratched the surface of the things that I want to talk to you about. I knew that you were interesting. I didn't realize this interesting. So you have to agree to come back and talk to me. I don't want to let you go though without talking about and mentioning your book. And when you come back on, I want to talk a lot more about Salesmen on Fire. I got to tell you, this is just one of the most interesting and easy to read sales books. What I mean is that you're very pulled into it. So tell us a little bit about the book, why you came up with the idea, and what's a couple of things that are really fascinating to me about you is that you're so prominent in the sales world, yet you have a corporate job, and most people who have a corporate job have not painted their brand that big, let alone gone out and written a book. So talk to us a little bit about where the journey for creating the brand came, and then I want to know about the book, and then I swear I'll let you go enjoy your family.
Thank you. No, Meredith, you're too kind, and absolutely would love to do this anytime. I'm very passionate about selling and the value that it can bring to people's lives. For me, the book journey, I wrote my first book, Birth of a Salesman, in 2010, and I got it published the old-fashioned way. That was a dream of mine. So I sent out 968 query letters to agents and publishers, and 15 offered to read it, 6 offered to publish it. I picked the one with the best distribution, but Salesman on Fire has far and away been the most popular one. And what I've done is there's a lot of great sales books out there, right? And so I didn't want to try to recreate the wheel. I created a fictional protagonist that goes through a sales journey. And so Salesman on Fire finds this guy kind of midlife and really looking for some new challenges. But, as you know, in sales, there's always pressures. There's always different scenarios that we face. This one actually makes him find a situation where he has a tough manager situation and faces this sales crucible that has him, questioning it all. And it's what he does after that that really kind of defines the character. I won't give anything away, but it was a very personal journey, and it kind of feeds back to some of the things that we've talked about during this conversation, Meredith.
Yeah, I loved it, and in fact, look for it. We're gonna feature it this coming week on Sales Logic. I just came across it because I wanted to meet you personally. You and I have been connected online for so long, but then I read it and I really loved it. I need to go back though and read Birth of a Salesman. I need to go back.
I get better with time. I'm like wine. So my later writing is much better than the writing I did when I was a one-call closer years ago in a boiler room.
Yeah, well, what you said was you're a lifelong learner, and I love that. I was just thinking the other day, I was running through a city where I was speaking, and I thought, if I went back into corporate sales right now, I would rock. I am so much better than than even I was back there. But that's another great thing about this profession, because unlike people in other professions, where it's a technical skill where maybe your body or your skill set doesn't hold out, this is definitely a profession where you just get better and better and better.
I spend a lot of time studying what got me paid, what got my team paid in the prior year, the prior frame, whatever it is. You've got to stay very focused on the big rocks and be diligent to that. And, it's amazing. The more you focus on those big rocks, you cut out the noise and you just have that no stone unturned, leave it all on the field mentality, you'll be successful.
Yeah, I always say to people, success isn't logical. And I love that about success. It doesn't, you say you came from a small town, you didn't know anything about tech, that it comes down to focus. And the beautiful thing about focus is we control it. You can control what you focus on, and it's a really powerful. Well, Carson, you have been amazing. Tell our audience how to find you, how to find out more about you, because you really do need to follow him. I mean, such good advice. And I'll tell you one thing that's really so, such a great reason to follow you is not only the content, but you're living the journey. I mean, you're not some expert telling people how to do something. You're right in the trenches doing it right along with people. So how do people find out more about you, find out about your books, and catch your podcast and your blogs?
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Meredith. I love that. I love still being in the field. I've had opportunities to move away from that, and I love doing what I do. So I'm very fortunate in that regard. LinkedIn, Twitter, great places to find me. I've got a blog at carsonvheady.com, and the books are available all on Amazon. So would love to connect, would love to chat and talk sales. And if there's some potential podcast guests out there too, send me a note.
Well, again, thank you so much for your time today. It was power packed. Now we're going to have all that information in the in the show notes. We'll wrap this up, put it in a podcast that lives on our website, get it out to promote to the audience. But I cannot encourage people enough. Follow Carson, learn from him. You got a question, reach out, because this is somebody who is out there selling just like you are. So again, thank you, audience, for engaging. You are always awesome. We'll see you right back here next week for another episode of Thrive, where together we are going to shift how we think, feel, and act towards uncertainty and put you in the driver's seat so you can turn uncertainty to your competitive advantage. We'll see you next week.